Hello world, it's Travis Bowlin. Today we'll be working on the Gitty 3-string fretted electric cigar box guitar. Y'all know the first thing I want to do is take a look at this manual. It's pretty nice, 28 pages long. It has an intro about the history of cigar box guitar, as well as detailed photos and step-by-step instructions, some information about the tuning, some songs you can play, as well as a catalog on some other kits that Gitty has for sale. Let's go over these parts. We have the strings, piezo disc and output jack, ferrules for the strings, screws, corners, sound hole covers, bridge, tuning keys, and the grommets for the tuning keys, as well as this box. It also comes with a 2-piece hardwood fretted neck. This neck is great. It has not only the frets, it's got a fretboard, it's got a nut there, and it's already been kind of channeled out. This is most of the time the hardest part of the cigar box guitar building, or any guitar building, is the neck. It takes a lot of precision to make sure those frets are exactly where they should be, or the instrument won't play right at all. The tools you'll need are a drill, a saw, various bits, glue, a hammer, a file, and a Phillips head screwdriver. First thing we're going to do is we're going to grab these string ferrules and we're going to put a little dab of glue in these pre-drilled holes and just set those in, 3 on each side. Those are where our strings will pull through. Next, I'm going to add the tuning keys. This is where the other side of the string will go through. There were some markings there to identify where the screws should go, but there weren't any holes, so I did have to use my smaller drill bit and drill some holes for the screws. You can see here I'm installing the third and final tuning key, just getting that last screw in there. Next, it's time to add the string ferrules or string bushings, however you call it. These help the tuning keys to stay in place, and it's a very good look. You can see here sometimes they get a little tricky and you gotta tap them with the hammer to knock them down completely. What I'm doing now is preparing my drill and drill bit to drill a hole in the box to mount the output jack. That's the jack that you plug in the guitar cord into the guitar amp. There you can see a little clearer what I'm doing. I'm just tightening up that nut. And next I'm going to glue the piezo disc. Now this is our electronic. This is what's going to make the guitar produce sound through the amplifier. And I've glued it here as suggested in the instructions. Once that glue had dried, came back to check it, and I decided that it was time for me to find the center of each side of the box. So I'm using the ruler here. This box was just a little over 7 1/4 inches. So once I found center of each side, I just marked the line, and then I set out where I was going to put my 2 sound holes. You can see here I'm marking those out right now with the sound hole covers. Once I figured out where I wanted the sound holes to be, I prepared it for drilling, starting with a small bit and working my way up to the bigger bit as you see here. I drilled 2 big holes, placed a little bit of glue on each one of those covers, and mounted them into place. After that, I opened the box and just cleaned up any debris that was left over from the drilling. These corners always take a while to drill the holes into screws, so I decided I would go ahead and mount the back ones on, because once I put the front ones on, it'll actually shut the box. The next steps are probably the most difficult. So what I've done here is I'm trying to find the height and the width of this neck and try to line it up with my center line. So once I lined it up with my center line, I made 2 lines, one on each side of the neck on each side of the box. This allowed me to determine my width of how much of this box I was going to have to cut out on each side to slide that neck through. Once you've got those measurements figured out, we have to figure out how deep to cut it. So we're going to measure the thickness of the neck minus the thickness of the lid. And the way I did that is I just took this little saw and went down, and then with this particular box, I use an X-Acto knife to kind of score it and then snap it off. And most of these cigar boxes that are this thin, you could do that. And I'm going to show you kind of exactly what I've done here on the other side. And then just to tighten up each end to make it nicer, I did use the file. Went back and forth a few times, putting the neck in there and then filing a little bit more, and then putting it back in there and filing a little bit more just to get it right. I took a piece of the wood that I had cut out from the box and lined it up with the neck and box just to see how the thickness was, to make sure I had the right amount of wood sticking out. Just a little more filing should get it just perfect. I wanted to slow this next part down. You can see right there in the box that the neck is just hanging up over the box about the thickness of the lid. Next, we're going to saw down into each side of the neck where it meets the body, about the thickness of the top of the box. You can see here what I'm doing, just making a few marks. And then I'm going to tighten up with the saw and get my depth for those two lines. What we're going to do is we're going to cut that portion of the wood out. Might just put it on the belt sander. So then it creates a nice tight snug fit all in the box, as well as creating a nice sound well. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out to the belt sander and I'm going to remove that amount of wood that I've measured out. That's about the thickness of the lid of the cigar box. Now in the directions they say you can use a keyhole saw or a coping saw. I didn't have one of those on hand, and I didn't have to take out too much wood, so this was a little easier for me. You can see here I have just a little bit of extra wood on each end where the belt sander couldn't reach. So to resolve this, I'm just going to go back with my little hand saw here and make a couple more saw marks downwards. Then I'll come back to it with my chisel and mallet and knock out that little piece of wood just so it lays flush with the box. And to clean it up a little bit, we'll just bring back the file and take a few strokes there to the neck. And again, I'm going to repeat the same process on the other end towards the tailpiece. Now you can see the neck's going to lay really nicely and flush with the box. Before we shut the box, we just want to clean up all of our sawed cut edges around here, just so it looks nice. As well as come back to the neck with a fine sanding block and just clean up everything. Now we're just going to prepare to glue the lid shut. I'm just going to put a fine bead of glue along this edge in case we do need to open it. We are going to put all the corners on there, so that'll help shut it as well. Now I'm going to install the corners. You know these take a while, so I'm just going to jump right to it with all 4 of them already installed. There it is. One side note, you can mask off the fretboard before you put the tuning keys on and install the neck through the body and stain the neck however you'd feel. Next, you want to grab your bridge and line it up center with your nut and just make 3 lines to guide your strings in the right direction. Then you take your saw and just make a groove in each line. That'll help your strings lay nice and smooth on the bridge. Then I took my fine grit sand block and just went over it a little bit. Now we're going to add the strings at low tension. We're going to go ahead and feed them through these string ferrules in the tailpiece. Now the strings go from thick to thin, starting with the thick one closest to you, then the next one and the thin one's going to be on the bottom farther away from you. I'm setting this guitar up for a right-handed player, but I am a left-handed guitar player. Now you can see here I'm feeding the strings through the tuning keys. Now I like to get quite a few wraps on here. If I can get, 4 or 5 wraps on that string, it's really good for tuning. And these strings are tuning inward, and you'll see that here shortly. I'm trying to fast forward it. It is a little bit of a process. Now you could just snip these strings with some snips, but I'm just gonna twist them here in a little circle. And there they are, obviously at low tension, because now we're gonna set where the bridge is supposed to be. I slid the bridge in there and lined each string up with their groove, and now we got to find out exactly where that's supposed to lay. We can determine this by the scale length, and that's the distance between the nut and the bridge. This guitar is a 24.75 inch scale length, so I'm going to line up the bridge just perfect. This will help for tuning and intonation. Then I just brought the strings up to full tension. Then once more I went with the fine sanding block and just went over any spots that I thought needed just a little bit of sanding. The action on this guitar was nice and low, but I wanted to bring it up a little bit higher for my own preference, so I took a couple wood cylinders I had and put them underneath the bridge, and it looked really great. Now let's play it and rate it. Overall, I'd give this kit a 10. It's really simple. It takes about 2 hours to complete. Other than needing a couple of tools, everything's there with really detailed instructions. Thank you for watching Kit Pit. Subscribe now for the latest videos.